Preference shares are those shares which carry with them preferential rights for their holders. Preferential rights as to fixed rate of dividend and as to repayment of capital at the time of winding up of the company. So at the time of winding up of the company, the preference shareholders will receive their capital before equity shareholders. And at the same time, the preference shares, we can say the preference, the rights of preference is receiving dividend and receiving their capital before equity shareholders. The characteristics of preference shares is number one, fixed rate of dividend. So before the company issuing of preference shares, there is a information how much dividend there is a chance to receive by the shareholders when the company earning profits. So fixed rate of dividend there is a chance to receive by the shareholders. And then priority as to payment of dividend. Priority also available to preference shareholders to receiving dividend. Priority means priority on equity shareholders. And then preference as to repayment of capital during liquidation of the company. At the time of liquidation of the company, repayment of capital also there is a preference to the preference shareholders. Generally, preference shareholders do not have voting rights. So because of having preferential rights on dividend and repayment of capital, they have no voting rights. They cannot elect any directors for management. According to Companies Act 1988, the preference shares can be redeemable and the maximum period for which they can be issued is 10 years, but later it is changed as per Companies Act 2013. The maximum period for redeemable of preference shares is 20 years. And preference shares are 8 categories. The company will issue in different categories up to 8. The one is cumulative preference shares and non-cumulative preference shares, convertible preference shares, non-convertible preference shares, participating preference shares, non-participating preference shares, redeemable preference shares and non-redeemable preference shares. Like this, the company can issue. The first one, that is cumulative. What is the meaning of cumulative means? Regarding dividend. If any fiscal year the company is not in a position to distribute dividend, the dividend will be cumulative for next financial years. So listen, if a certain company does not declare an annual dividend, the advantage is carried over to the following fiscal year in the case of cumulative preference shares. The fixed rate of dividend is guaranteed and arrears will be paid out in latter years if there is sufficient profit. The shareholders will not suffer any losses. The shareholders, those who invested their money in cumulative preference shares, there is no chance to get losses. And second, non-cumulative. In the case of non-cumulative preference shares, there is no provision for obtaining accrued dividend benefits in upcoming years. If a specific company does not declare an annual dividend, in the event of insufficient earnings, they are guaranteed a fixed rate of payout. This is non-cumulative preference shares. And third one is participating preference shares. Participating preference shares permit shareholders to earn excess profits